Hello, my name is Ollie, and I experienced what it means to trust a friend. I don't recommend anyone doing something like this if you don't want to be in my shoes. I met Rue at school, literally a couple of years ago, when we were both 14, and only bright prospects were waiting for us in our futures. Yes, a couple of years of friendship is not a whole life, and not even from the first grade friendship, but so have you ever had the feeling like you look at a person and understand them from the first few minutes, and that you both belong together? Not in terms of romantically, but simply spiritually. Rue really was part of me in a good sense of the word. She supplemented me, and at the same time, understood me. Well, it was mutual, it seemed to me. Anyway, such an ideal friendship from the first sight. It happened so that despite the same interests, our tastes were quite different. Therefore, we easily avoided half of the debates because there was no point in sharing the same blouse or a guy. We liked different ones. Both blouses and guys or whatever. Well, I thought so before all these events. And I also knew for sure that Rue would never tell my secrets to others, and therefore, I willingly shared with her all my worries, including the plans for my personal future. Of course, I didn't have these plans until I was 16, but I still could tell her something, right? Rue had an absolutely fantastic flair for people. She could literally say with a couple of glances on a person whether to deal with him or not, and I trusted her. At 16, I fell in love for the first time. The boy from our school, Dan, who was a year older than me, my first fatal love. It seemed to me that he was just perfect. But I generally have a problem with my excessive enthusiasm. That's what my mom says. And of course, I immediately shared my feelings with Rue. It turned out that she knew Dan, and knew pretty well if I could look at my dream only at a distance, in the corridors or in the courtyard of the school. Then my friend, who was fond of vocals and participated in school choir, sang with him in this very choir, and their parents got along well, but not so much that they were considered even friends. When I found out about his talents, I also thought of signing up for vocals, but they didn't take me. In fact, I wasn't very upset, because in addition to school classes, I went to the classes of photography and I simply didn't have time for any extra courses, but at least I tried. All my free time, I was whining. The sorrow that I don't know how to attract his attention, that Daniel was a choir star, an athlete, a handsome man, the owner of the most charming smile, and #1 in school, will never look at such a grayness like me. And basically, Rue was forced to listen to my sufferings. I then, once again, made sure what an awesome friend she was, because frankly speaking, after a couple of months, even my own mom started to run away from my talks about love, and Rue kept listening. She even sympathized and gave advice. For example, I dared to say hello to him for the first time in the corridor near the lockers by her motivation. He answered me, and I almost died there from happiness. True, while I was thinking about how to hit him in the heart, he had already left. But personally, according to my feelings, this was a huge step forward. And then it happened. It so happened that I left school later than usual. In our classes, we mastered the correct way to develop photographs in the red room, and slightly didn't look at the time. The school bus had already left, and I had to go to a bus stop near the mall. Even after school, I warned Rue not to wait for me. So when I saw her at the bus stop, I was a little confused. For some reason, I thought she stayed there for me, and I rushed to run to scare her, or simply surprise her. And suddenly, I saw Dan. He was there too. He stood next to Rue and said something to her, holding her hand. I didn't see Rue's face, and I didn't try to do it, because at that moment, a giant thorny ball was slowly turning in my chest, which literally burst my insides with pain. I used to think that the phrase, punch the daylights out, was a metaphor. No, I myself experienced approximately the same feeling when I simultaneously saw my beloved with another girl who was betraying me right in front of my eyes. Then I just ran away without saying anything. Rue called me, tried to talk, but I just couldn't physically. My mouth didn't open, and before my eyes stood the picture again and again. Rue and Dan, who are holding hands at the bus stop. I didn't communicate with Rue anymore, and didn't find the strength in me to listen to her and forgive. I only know that they don't date, but anyway, it's terribly painful. I have no more friends except my mom. Now I trust only her, and I no longer believe in female friendship.
My name is Rue, and Ollie told you about my betrayal. Yes, I betrayed my best friend. But what if everything was completely not like that? I'm not very sociable in life, and I really get along with people. So the appearance of Ollie in my life was a real fairy tale for me. I always wanted to live like in books, so that there was someone to sleep with in pajamas, go shopping, and discuss boys. There were practically no girls around me, only classmates, but they were interested in cosmetics, fashion, and all that. I liked art more, and to be honest, the girls didn't really want to take me to their companies. And then the parents were set to another city, to the new office of their company, and we moved. And I decided that this was my chance to find a friend. And I met Ollie, and then kept her as the last hope. Probably it's not too nice of me to impose myself like I did, but I felt 14 years of loneliness. And Ollie was not against friendship. She also seemed to have communication problems, so very quickly we became pretty close. And all that I dreamed about came true. And spending the nights and laughing at breaks and discussing the boys. Boys. If I only knew that my acquaintance with the handsome Dan would turn into a tragedy for our friendship. Ollie fell in love, and all the time she spoke only about Dan and how wonderful he was. And it so happened that my parents just worked with his parents, and therefore they were often guests in our house. Beloved by adults, play together for the kids of all ages introduced Dan and me. No, we were not friends, and did not even communicate. Only some general phrases, in the same choir. We were stably pretending not knowing each other at all, although I'm not sure whose initiative was that one. And I even left alone in my room, while my parents resolved their issues in the living room. They really just drank and chatted, and didn't especially communicate. There was simply nothing to talk about. And of course, when Ollie fell in love, I decided to help my best friend. Why did I call Dan to talk? I wanted, to ask him to take a walk with Ollie or something. Everything turned out very well. Ollie lingered on her classes that day, and I decided to use my free time to talk with Dan. I called him to a stop. There simply is takeaway coffee, quite tasty, and a square with benches, and for a long time I tried to figure out which side I should approach. I guess it's my fault that I started the conversation wrong. I began to tell him about the fact that there is one girl in school who really likes him, and something else about the first love and chance that everyone needs to be given. I guess I was too convincing in my story, or simply Dan misunderstood me, but suddenly, without even hearing what I had to say, Dan began to confess his love to me. And it turned out that he was in love with me all those 2 years that we've known each other. Allegedly, he immediately liked me with my silence and gloomy appearance, and then finally subdued when I came to the choir and sang something about love. And Dan is very glad that our feelings are mutual. You see, I was so confused at that moment that I didn't really think at all how we looked from the outside, with the holding hands and dreamy expression on Dan's face. Of course, I immediately said that my whole story was not about me at all, but about my friend. And to me, I didn't care about him. But of course, Dan did not believe, and began to say that we should try, like I myself said about the fact that everyone who is in love should give it a chance, which means I perfectly understand his feelings. I was babbling something about Ollie, trying to convince him that he was mistaken, but for some reason I never pulled out my hand. And then I saw Ollie, and the smile on her face gave way to a terrible grimace. We went to the museum in the previous school, and there were ritual posthumous masks of people. Here, Ollie's face was practically the same. Honestly, I was scared, but I was not afraid for myself. I was sure she would not do anything bad to me, but for herself. I was afraid that she would do something with herself, and then immediately push Dan away and ran after Ollie. But she refused to talk to me. She didn't answer the phone, she didn't leave the room when I personally went to her house, and at school she significantly ignored me. How I hated Dan! Because of his impenetrable stupidity, and mine too, why hide, I lost the best and only one friend. And most of all, I wanted not even to make peace, but to explain to Ollie that I had never betrayed our friendship. Ollie and I didn't communicate anymore, but I still hope I'll have the chance to fix everything.
This is the story of betrayal. It is up to you to decide who is right and who is the victim. Write your opinion in the comments, give advice how to reconcile girls, and remember that a first impression of even the most obvious scene can be deceiving.